Hi. Some people I know have asked me to kind of talk quite a bit about this, so I thought, why not make it a video for everyone to hear if they are so inclined. Um, this is the tier list I made yesterday. I'll be real, as I said in the tweet, I don't really play too much nowadays. COVID-19 kind of ruined that. I don't like playing online, Parsec, etc. So I am maybe a bit out of the loop as well, and ultimately this is my opinion. It's an opinion piece. I'm not saying this is like the truth of the game. I can be wrong, blah blah blah. Despite that, I've seen some people are getting a bit tight over it for some reason. Not in my Twitter feed, not adding me or coming to me on Discord like some others are, but chilling in their own little communities, subtweeting, etc., and getting mad for some reason. Don't really know why that is. But I thought, well, let me explain, some of the contentious characters and, kind of my thoughts and feelings on it and kind of go from there. So I've answered some questions on Twitter, which are public. Some people have asked me questions in WhatsApp, Discord, which are obviously not. So I'll try and cover all the kind of things that have been brought up to me that people disagree on or whatever, or quite confused about. The first thing I need to reiterate is there is no ordering left to right or anything like that. I guess some people just looked at the tier list, didn't actually read what I tweeted at all, because some people seem to think that it is ordered left to right. It isn't. Please, God, no, it isn't. It certainly isn't. Even if I look at it and I order it left to right, I think I'm an idiot. So, to take that in mind, it is not ordered at all. There's just 5 tiers, and that's it. Characters are in the tier, that's how strong I think they are relatively, and that's it. Before I continue, the other thing is, if you see my Twitter, you follow me on Twitter, you'll know at the moment I am still on quite some strong painkillers, so I might slur my words a little bit in this video because they make me drowsy. Combine that with the accent. If you can't understand what I'm saying at a certain point, and you really want to know what I'm saying, let me know, and I'll transcribe where I can. I understand not everyone's first language is English, and my accent doesn't help it. Anyway, let's start. Let's go with the bottom. Start from D. Well, let's start actually with there are 5 tiers. I kind of wanted to make like 8 tiers, but I thought that was a bit too much, so I condensed it into 5. So let's start with that. So let's talk about the D tier. So I think these characters kind of just suck. They need meter to survive, to do damage, to do everything. And I feel like without meter, they're all very lackluster characters. They can't really do much of anything. Their pressure isn't amazing. I mean, even with meter, their damage output isn't always great. Some characters like Ralph have amazing damage with meter, especially in the corner. But I feel like these characters just have a really hard time opening people up. I feel like even when they do, even when they can get damage, it's really situational. They don't have good overheads. Some have fuzzies and things like that, but they don't have like really strong mix up on the ground either. Things like Terry's EX crack shoot, it's great, but it's -10, super punishable, only gets you a knockdown, costs the bar, that kind of thing. I think the characters in D, I don't really need to talk too much about them. If I'm being honest, I think Terry and Maxima are better than the other 3, but they're not good enough to go into the C tier, so they're in the D tier. That's my opinion on those. They have too many downsides, they cost too much bar, they don't have very many upsides. At most, some of them have pretty good damage in pretty specific scenarios, and that's about it. Maxima's Air EX Vapor Cannon is probably one of the best EX moves in the game, but it's on Maxima, so even when it works, you can't always get like a really good conversion or anything. Depending on range, you might need to spend more meter, and yeah, I don't think they're very, very amazing characters at all. C tier. C tier is like the cusp of like a character that I think is like good and worth like really trying to become an expert with, but they're just not quite good enough. I think all of them are like good enough to like play and stuff, but they all struggle really hard with some matchups. Again, they're very situational at times, like the D tier, for example. Billy is an amazing character in the corner. Mid screen, Billy's kind of whatever. Billy's really good against characters with not that don't have DPs as well, because his jump ins can be really annoying and hard to deal with. But again, he's not quite there. Leona is again another character that is decent, but again quite situational at times. She's got a good reversal, good anti-air, but again her pressure's kind of lackluster. Her overhead knocks down. She doesn't really have she's got the instant overhead stuff, which is amazing and really good, but if at any point they get blocked, she dies for it, because it's not like the cancel doesn't come out on block. So it's a weird one for these characters. Like a lot of them have like something pretty good about them. Raiden's drop kicks, Mature's fireball is really good. Mai is a really good fireball character. Ashe has things like Sans Calote. Kula's normals, well, specifically her light normals are really, really good, but her damage isn't great. Andy can play a decent-ish game, but overall, but again, all of these characters I feel like have a solid foundation, but they fall short, and they're very situational, and that's why they're there. I don't have to touch on anyone too much, I guess, except maybe Joe. Joe, I think if Joe could get the stun combo and like make his way to the corner kind of easier or from like a further distance, he would go up to B. But because he can't do that, because he does kind of struggle, he can sit. For me, at least, he sits in that C tier instead, because I don't think he can really like compete with that. Without it, I think he needs the stun combo to even be in the C tier. If he could get access to it easier, maybe build the opponent less meter or something, he would be B tier. But because it builds so much meter for the opponent, because it's very situational, that's why he's C tier. Ashe is similar. If Ashe didn't build so much meter for the opponent during his combos, I would put him in B tier. But because he builds them so much meter, it can even be a detriment to hit like a good Ashe combo on someone just because of that. At least in my opinion, that's how I feel. That's the thing I feel is holding back a character like Ashe. Gonna talk about Hwajai next. So, talking about Hwajai is interesting to me because he was very difficult to put. I'll probably talk about the B tier more than anyone because they were all difficult to place. Hwajai, amongst the B tier, Hwajai and Psyche are the two strongest of the B tier, and the weakest are probably K-Dash and Kenso. Enough so that I kind of wanted to make like a B plus tier or like a B minus, but again I chose to stick to 5 tiers. I didn't want to like clutter it and have like 8, 9, 10 tiers because I think that kind of ruins it. So for me, Hwajai is an interesting character because he is about as good as a lot of the A tier characters, but I cannot bring myself to put him in A tier because he does have some matchups that are really tough for him. Dragon Tail, some people are like, oh, but Dragon Tail's like safe against non-command grab characters and things like that. But even though it's only -1, right? 2, -1, -2. I think -2 for the B version. Even though it's only -2, that's huge for Hwajai because, it's only worth doing on block when you're drunk so that you can threaten with DP drive cancel and take that like huge risk, huge reward payout, right? But because it's minus, and Hua Jai's normals, his fastest normal is his crouch A. It's his only 4-frame normal, and his crouch A also isn't very good. Oftentimes people will like press crouch B because it's a low as well, but you know, that's 5 frames. Every normal other than crouch A is 5 frames or slower. And I think that kind of hurts him quite a lot, because even characters that do things that are, you know, maybe -1, -2, can abuse that against Hua Jai because his normals are so slow. You know, he has a hard time kind of dealing with situations like that himself, and putting himself in that situation isn't very good either. As I said, like the only big thing you've got going for you as a Hua Jai player in that situation is that I am drunk, will I DP, take that massive risk for, you know, the massive reward of being able to like drive cancel and do the loops. His slide is obviously ridiculously good. You know, it can be plus on block even when cancelled. But again, because his normals are so slow, you know, even if it's like +1, a lot of characters can end up contesting him and like trading with his stand A afterwards. You know, and that puts him in a, to me, I think that kind of is what's stopping him being like A tier. If, say, Hua Jai's stand A was 4 frames or his crouch B was 4 frames, I would say he's A tier, but I think just because his normals are slow, there's a lot of situations he gets into that he isn't very good at getting out of because of that slow normal problem. Like, Hua Jai versus himself is so bizarre because the slide is way better against Hua Jai than it is against most of the cast, because he doesn't have a good fast normal to kind of retaliate with in some situations. But yeah, I think that's how I kind of feel about him. His command grab as well, like his super, because it's 2 frames, you know, if you're fighting a charge character, they can actually like flash kick out of it, which I think kind of sucks as well. There isn't many characters that can do that, but the fact that it can be done at all, I think, is kind of whack. His invincible grab's good for certain situations, of course, and you can use that to bait it out, but again, it's all a guessing game at that point. Now, let's talk about Psyche, since he's the other strong character that's in this tier. Again, like Hua Jai, I thought maybe of putting him up, or again, moving Kenso and K-Dash down. But Psyche, again, is like, he's about as good as the A tier, but I can't say he's as good as any of the A tier, in my opinion. I've played against Psyche a ton. I've played Psyche, I can play Psyche, I've played against Mysterio a ton as well. And I don't know, I just don't think he's as good as the other characters in that A tier. He is like a really good character, but for me, I think the thing that keeps him going, and I mentioned this briefly on Twitter talking to Whiteash, is that his versatility just isn't quite there. Like, if I take like King or Athena as a comparator, like Psyche, you know, his normals are better than Athena's, but I don't think they're as good as King's. King is like the king of normals, right? So there's that. Mid-screen, Psyche's a B tier character mid-screen, and Psyche's an S tier character in the corner. That's my kind of take on Psyche. And I don't like putting a character like that into that A tier. I know it kind of fits in the middle between the two, but the fact that he kind of needs to get them to the corner to really become like the oppressive, high damage, ridiculous character that he can be, I think is what stops me putting him up. Just because I feel like there's that requirement to get to the corner. That's not to say his fireball game isn't good. It is pretty good. But I just think, you know, when it comes to his mid-screen, his damage mid-screen, his pokes mid-screen, the only thing he really has is stand D, which is good, but that's kind of it. His, like, normals, his light normals aren't very good. His anti-air super is really, really good, of course. But even then, you know, it kind of hits. If someone kind of lands directly on top, or someone jumps in directly on top of Psyche's head, he can't really anti-air them without using down C, and down C's hurt box is not good. And if they press a button early, he can often get hit, and then like the character will land in time even then to still combo him. So I feel like for that kind of part of it, the idea that like he has to be very careful at times as well about where he anti-airs, and he has that kind of like blind spot right on the top of his head. I think that's what keeps me from putting him in that A tier. I think it's just that the fact that he needs the corner to really shine as a character, and the fact that there are some kind of blind spots in his fireball game. Characters like Benimaru, for example, can really abuse. And there are a lot of characters in the A tier that are pretty good against fireballs. Although there are some that aren't very good against fireballs at the same time. But I feel like the fireball game isn't enough to tide him over. I think maybe if he had like a nice stand B, or a decent, or maybe if the anti-air super hit more directly right above his head, for example, I would put him in A. But that kind of blind spot and stuff, I can't place him in A. I can't bring myself to do it. I don't think he's that good. But he certainly is probably the best of the B tier. If not, maybe it's him and Hwajai that probably should be up one, maybe not. Daimon, I think is kind of self-explanatory. He's a good character, but he's kind of got a glaring kind of weakness. His Oki off his grabs, or his Oki off his one frame grab, isn't that great. You can get like a manual timed safe jump, I think. But even then, you're kind of putting yourself at quite a distance when you do that. And it's hard to kind of like establish the pressure, and alternate guard is really strong against him. He can't like really do much about that. Especially if he does something like stand B roll and he tries to go for the invul grab. If people are alternate guarding, the moment he commits to that roll, he's dead, And I think that's kind of what stops me putting him up. Maybe if alternate guarding wasn't in the game, or maybe if he was a little bit faster, I would put him up a tier, but I can't put him in the same tier as Clark, because I think Clark is just a better grappler than he is, and more versatile. Rio is again another character that is like really strong, but he's, I think, very reliant on his kind of pressure and guard breaks, and I think that kind of falls apart against some characters. And the better the player that someone is, kind of shuts it down more and more. So I don't think Rio really deserves to be in the A tier. K-Dash and Kenso. Now, a lot of people are like, why are they like in the same tier as like Psyche and Hwajai, and that's ridiculous, they're not good, blah blah blah. Alright, well, most people think I'm underrating Psyche, whereas I probably would argue I'm probably overrating K-Dash and Kenso. But I play both of these characters, and I think they're both good. I don't think they're amazing. They're definitely the biggest contenders to drop to C tier, but I think they're better than the C tier characters. They're definitely not as good as the A tier, but they are a bit questionable in the same tier as Psyche, for example. But talking about Kenso, like Kenso as a character, one, nobody likes him. Nobody likes Kenso. He's kind of boring. He's kind of one-dimensional in this game. But I don't think that makes him weak. His damage output can be insane. His HD is, like, his optimal HD is really good. His, like, pressure is pretty good. His jump CD is really good. His other jump-ins suck, which is a real downside. If they were better and maybe his hop wasn't as floaty, maybe he could be a better character. But the other side of the coin is, like, his EXDP, for example, is absolutely ridiculous. Just go into training mode and do the EXDP against someone and look at that damage. It's insane. One or two mistakes against Kenso, you can be missing quite a lot of health, and you won't even realize how the hell that happened. And Kenso will have spent 2 bars, and that's it. He can say he doesn't need to spend a drive on that. And in the corner, off a throw, he's one of the characters that can combo off his throw. for one bar, one drive, he can do 500 damage, which is, similar to Benny if you don't do the infinite, right? So, I think he's alright. I think he's not bad. He's definitely not a bad character. He, again, is questionable in B tier. I get that, but mostly because Psyche and stuff is there, but I think he's a good character. I wouldn't place him in the C tier. B tier is where I say, like, this character is worth investing time into. They're good tournament characters, I feel. That's where I would place the B tier, and for that reason, that's why I put Kenso there. K-Dash, I think a lot of people kind of underrate K-Dash because they don't quite get it. He is, I think, one of the harder characters to play. That's for sure. But I definitely don't think he's as bad as some people make him out to be. He is definitely a character kind of like Psyche, that without the corner he can't really shine the way that he does mid-screen, but even then I think mid-screen he's better than Psyche. His crouch B is ridiculously good. Iron Trigger is a very, very good special move, and that's basically the core of his game. His jump CD is really good. Being able to jump CD, get a counter hit, and then do, minute spike on the ground. Is it minute or narrow spike? I can't remember. Minute spike, to carry like 3/4 of the screen, or, jump CD again, and then use EX air minute spike to basically carry almost full screen. It's so easy for K-Dash to get that corner and then start playing that really offensive game in the corner that is hard to deal with for some characters. His DP is good. It's a bit slow, but it's good. And the EX version, you can use in situations where you're maybe a bit too slow to really rock that CDP. So I think K-Dash deserves to be where he is. But I did have a hard time, again, putting him in that B tier with, again, Psyche and Hua, who are kind of the standout characters in this tier. But that's kind of my thoughts on B tier. A tier, I feel like I don't need to explain very many of these. Some people are asking, why is Kim and Chen not in the S tier? I did briefly answer that on Twitter with White Ash. I think these characters are incredibly strong in the A tier. I think A tier and S tier are not at all far apart. But for Kim and Chen specifically, there are some matchups for these two characters that are tough, like very tough to deal with. In Kim's case, King is hard, Athena's hard. Duolon it's not as hard, but it's still hard. Psyche is hard even, for example. I think, these kind of zoning characters, Kim's jump normals are slow, his jump's not very great in general. He kind of has to rely on kind of air EX Sangetsu-zan to kind of make something work to get in on these characters, but I think the matchup against these characters in particular is very, very tough for him. As for Chen, because he's small, characters like Yuri, Kyo are tough. I think Duolon is tough for Chen as well, because Chen can't punish the teleport, from what I remember. If I'm remembering that wrong, maybe it's even, but I feel like he can't actually punish it. And I think Duolon's jump D is very, very good against Chen, again, because he's small and it's easy to cross him up. And I think in that case, Chen is an S tier just because he has some tough matchups, even amongst the cast, and that's kind of why I don't place them in S, because in S, I feel like it's when I look at the S tier characters, I have a hard time thinking of what their bad matchups are. In that aspect, I think those characters are ridiculously strong, but I'll go over those in a moment. As for who else is in the A tier, Clark, I think, is a good character. He's better than Daimon. I don't think I need to talk too much about it, but his mix-up game's pretty good. He's got a decent cross-up. His roll mix-up, while it can be option selected and stuff, you can bait the OS and then punish them pretty heavily. I think he is a really good character. He's a very high momentum character that can really turn around a match. Athena, I mentioned in the tweet, Flamey Rory with the Infinite is like undisputed the best character in the game, but I'm not considering the Infinite. Benimaru without the Infinite is A tier, because I think Benimaru's Infinite is easy enough that well, it's not easy, but it's easy enough that it's more practical than the Flame Yuri Infinite, and more people can do it than the Flame Yuri Infinite. For Athena, she goes down to B tier if you cannot do her combos like perfectly. And I think that's kind of why a lot of people kind of underrate or don't really expect her to be top, or like a really not top tier but a high tier character. Her her combo damage is insane for the kind of character that she is. For a hit practically anywhere on the screen, Crystal Bit is a free frame reversal. It's amazing. The EX1 is also free frames, but just has a nice big chunky hitbox in comparison, like right at the start. Yeah, I just think Athena in general is just like a really strong character that a lot of people don't rate because she's also probably one of the hardest characters in the game to play, especially to play optimally. But I definitely think she deserves to be in that spot. I could probably make a video talking all about Athena and what she's so good at, and some of the option selection stuff that she has that are difficult, but are incredibly, incredibly good. And I think I was speaking with someone on Twitter, and I think the only person that ever really showed Athena her full potential was Mysterio, and I think until he showed that off, I think a lot of people thought maybe she was even in the C tier, for Christ's sake. And I never personally thought that. I remember talking to people years before Mysterio ever played that, and I was telling them like Athena is like a really good character. She's just really, really, really hard, And I personally could never be consistent enough with her to make her like that A tier character. But I was really happy when someone who was that good could like show off just how powerful she is when you've got the execution and just the play style down so well. I think for the rest of the A tier, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Someone did ask why Yuri's not an S. It's the same as Kim and Chen. She is a very strong character, but there are some matchups that are very hard, and that's why I put her down to A instead. Talking about the S tiers, I think these characters are honestly, for the most part, as good as the A tier characters, but again, I find it difficult to figure out where are the bad matchups for these characters. They have some matchups that are not in their favor, but trying to find a matchup that is like super tough, I can't find one for any of them really. I can't think of a character for any of these characters that is like ridiculous and so like tough for them that it's like an uphill battle. It's like it's a little hard, I guess. That's kind of how I feel about it. A lot of people ask, Flame Yuri is way better than Claw Yuri and blah blah blah. I disagree. I think Flame Yuri. The thing about Flame Yuri is he's very familiar for a lot of people that play KOF and have played KOF for many years. He is straightforward. He's not too hard. If you can do the infinite, he's definitely better. But when it comes down to it, I feel like Claw is a better second and third place Iori, and Flame Iori is a better first position Iori. Right? That's kind of how I feel about it. And Claw's damage output, his comeback potential, his stand B is so ridiculously obnoxious. And like Flame Iori has it as well, but you can't dash and do it the same way Claw Iori can. You can't like pressure and annoy characters with it the same way Claw Iori can. Like Claw Iori, for example, versus like Takuma and even Karate, they can barely, if at all, I don't know if they even can, hop over his stand B. And that's really tough because it's so fast, it's so good. And if you're really, really good with the Iori, you can use stand B and like buffer in the super, and if you see the opponent move or do anything, like you can stand B super, then you have your free frame safe jump, which gives you your mix up potential right after it. And that mix up can lead into a ton of damage for not a lot of meter or drive spent, and even lead back into the same free frame, safe jump and loop that and kill a character. You know, his HD damage is insane. If you can do like the command grab, down forward C, mid screen activate, that opens up a lot of doors that otherwise he doesn't have. You know, as far as damage from the command grab and that mix up potential. So I think that's important, and being able to do that is needed maybe to put him into the S tier. But I think overall, like just that alone, his level 2 super being invul, going through fireballs and stuff, unlike Flame super, is really, really nice. You know, he has all the other benefits of Flame Iori, you know, with in terms of his normals, you know, his jump normals, his jump arc, you know, everything about him is so good. I think both the Ioris are incredibly strong. I think Claw Iori is the best anchor in the game, in my opinion. I don't think he's got too tough a matchup, and especially against the other anchor characters, I think he does pretty well. So yeah, that's why I put them both in the same tier. I think Claw Iori is a ridiculously strong character. Some people got kind of tight at me thinking he's good. I don't know why. I think maybe people are jaded the same way about Takuma, where it's like, you know, because Flame Iori and Mr. Karate were more popular, and you couldn't pick Claw Iori or Takuma if you picked them, you know, they're jaded and they think, oh, those characters aren't good, when in reality, they're still very, very good. It's just that, you know, at the end of the day, for Flame Iori in particular, I think he's just way more popular. People are so used to Flame Iori, they like the Rekkas, they like having him on point and rushing down, whereas Claw Iori is a more patient character who kind of pokes away at people and kind of very setup heavy once you kind of get that super off. And, you know, whiff punish stand B into super is ridiculously strong, and it's hard to be good at something like that at times as well. So I feel like people underrate the characters just because their DLC EX counterparts are so much more popular. But, you know, in my opinion, you know, I think if you could pick both the Ioris, you would have seen plenty of teams pick Flame Iori, someone else, Claw Iori as their team, you know? That's how I feel anyway. Mr. Karate being S tier, self-explanatory. Yeah, I touched on Flame Iori already. If he has the infinite, he's number one, the best character in the game, no questions asked. Without the infinite, he's just a normal S tier character. Benimaru, I think, is pretty self-explanatory as well. His the snap kick is ridiculously strong. Some characters can't punish it. A lot of characters can, but some can't, and it can be really abusive. It's really good to whiff punish people. His jump arc is incredibly powerful. His jump D is insane. EX Raijinken is like one of the best moves in the game. You know, if you can infinite, he's S. If you can't, he's A tier. He's still an incredibly strong character. His infinite in particular has no downside, like Iori's, for example, like Flame Iori's, for example. Flame Iori, you need to keep spending the drive meter, which is a bit of a downside if Flame Iori then loses, or, you know, you drop the combo or something. With Benimaru, you don't spend anything once the infinite starts, so you can end that infinite with full HD. Your opponent will have full HD as well, but, you know, if you then get the first touch in the next round, you can HD, carry them to the corner, and infinite again, and kill another character and build some of that HD back even by the time they're dead. You know, I think that's incredibly, incredibly, incredibly good. But yeah, without it, he's an A tier character. With it, he's S tier. And Vice, which a lot of people got tight about as well. I don't know how people think Vice is bad or not, like, good to this day. Maybe some people were saying, oh, I don't think she's S, she's A. Maybe, but, you know, in my opinion, Vice is another character that it's hard to find a bad matchup for Vice. And she kind of has everything. You know, she makes characters afraid to jump because of EX Sleeve. Her damage output is pretty good for what it is. She has a 1-frame grab with incredible range. Her EX grab even, I think, has the best range in the game. Correct me if I'm wrong. The EX grab, at the very least, if it's not the best, it's like the second or third best. It is insane. The range on that is farther than a lot of supers, for Christ's sake. You know, she gets a safe jump off of them. She can get into the grab really easy to get that safe jump every time. She has a good overhead. She can cancel into super grab. She can cancel it to HD. You know, it knocks down on hit, so even if they get hit in the air and she cancels into super grab, she's still safe because they get knocked down. I'm pretty sure it's a hard knockdown too. So, you know, I think overall, like, Vice is an incredibly, incredibly powerful character. I might be slightly overrating her, maybe. But again, it's because I can't think of who has a tough time, or who does Vice have a tough time against, and I can't think of who that is. Because even against, like, Fireball characters who might be the characters that give her the toughest time, one jump CD, and then EX sleeve, and she gets to do whatever she wants. She can crouch B under a ton of fireballs as well, you know, and that's not always a good thing to do because depending on the range and stuff. But the fact that she can low profile that, crouch B, because of the low profile as well, is an amazing anti-air. It's insane, you know. You don't even have to stand up and press a standing normal with her if you're too late, because that crouch B low profile is so good. It's the best in the game that a lot of air to ground normals won't hit her unless you do it super deep. So she can punish you for jumping that way as well. Jumping on its own is super risky against her. She can EX sleeve, spend 1 bar, you know, get half of that bar back. She can spend some drive on it to tack on some damage. She has good comeback potential. I don't know, I feel like Vice kind of does everything, and the downside to Vice is, again, people, like, with Vice you need to play super patient, which is the one downside. If Vice doesn't have the life lead and she has to make something happen, she puts herself in a position of more risk than when she's forcing you to come to her. In that position where she's forcing you to come to her, she is, I feel like, near enough unstoppable. Not to say that she's like broken OP, but I mean, like, getting to her without putting yourself in a really bad situation is really tough. You know, for jumping to be such a scary thing to do, for a character to be able to put that fear into you, especially on something like an anchor round, she has such a good and easy. She has an easy time forcing you to do something bad because it feels like everything you do when you approach her is bad. Her normals stand C is really good. Her sweep is good because you can also confirm it into EX sleeve to then get a full combo, you know, HD or otherwise. I just think she's an incredibly good character, and I find it difficult to pinpoint a character that gives her a hard time, so that's why I put her S. But yeah, I think that's it. I think I've covered everyone. This video is probably a little bit long. I don't know how long it is, probably 30 minutes. But if you were interested and you lasted through this explanation, then, you know, I'm quite happy for that. And again, you know, if you wanna pick my brains a bit more, you wanna ask me a question, or you even if you disagree with me, you know, hit me up on Twitter or Discord or whatever. Don't just sit in your like private room talking shit, because I mean that's kind of whack. Just tell me. I don't care. You can call me the worst human being alive to my face, but, you know, I just want to know what's other people's opinions, right? Like, I'm not gonna be right on everything. You know, this is just how I feel at the end of the day. But yeah, if you made it through this whole thing and, you know, you still think I'm an idiot or whatever, that's cool. Let me know. But yeah, you know, thanks for listening, I guess, and you know, I'd be interested in hearing what other people's thoughts are, or if you think I'm wrong or whatever. Cheers.